and Managing Trustee of the InfraVision Foundation. Thank you all very much for being with us. Mr. Gupta, let me come to you first. Inasmuch as we will be talking about the India story and infrastructure, it fascinates me that the Adani Group looks so much at the entire Asia-Pacific region, one among many regions, when it comes to ports, and that's something that you deal with personally. Even if you go beyond our region to Haifa, then in our region to Tanzania, if you look at Sri Lanka, quite besides ports in our own country, it fulfills a larger geostrategic goal that is linked to the India growth story. How?
First of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this distinguished panel. I'm just thrilled to join this conversation. Let me start with the India growth story in a sustainable planet. We believe in the $10 trillion economy. Where it will come from, the trade is at the core of it. What about trade? When we talk about focus on infrastructure, on energy, on industrialization, all talks about trade. Now, if you look at our figures, 95% of the trade last year was done by maritime, which is 68% of the value of all India. Then this is very clear that more and more efficient and effective trade, not only in India, but globally, is going to contribute to this 10 trillion economy. Now, when we look back a couple of thousand years before, what were the traditional and historical trade routes? They were all about India, East Africa, North Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. I think time has come when these trades will be revitalized to bring the growth in India, not only for India, but from all these global trade routes. Yeah. And that's why we are not only focusing on India, which is one of the greatest growth factor, but also focusing on East Africa, North Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia.
Right, and I just wanted to come across to you, Mr. Sasalu. You know, when we talk about sustainable growth, obviously the demand for growth in our country, whether it's urban growth, growth in rural centers, all of that is critical. But we have to keep an eye out on the environment. We have to ensure that our growth is not just equitable, but it is also environment friendly. Greenhouse emissions is a huge concern. Going forward, how does inclusive growth need to include a concern for the environment?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here and sharing my thoughts on this subject and with eminent panelists here. With regards to your question regarding the sustainable growth and equitable growth, what we have, if I may use the word messed up, what we have messed up in the last 100 years cannot be reversed in 5 years or 6 years because the economies in the world cannot sustain such kind of investment. More equitable is when we are able to educate people and when the larger organizations which are there are going to be moving towards the sustainable initiatives and also taking the entire population along with that and making sure they understand their role in this massive transformation that the world needs is probably the way the world should be going ahead.
You know, it is often a cliche that when one looks at infrastructure, one looks at buildings and ports and airports and highways, etc. But, you know, Rumjung, when we had a conversation, a chat before we started this program, you pointed out the need to speak about social infrastructure because it's not just enough to have structures, it's important to focus on education, healthcare, water. Could you tell us about how this needs to be a key part of 2047?
Vishnu, I think we've made significant progress in terms of core infrastructure sectors in the last few years, and we're very proud of that. And that has come about because of large investments that have gone in, private sector has been involved, that has led to quality infrastructure at scale, and of course, you know, world-class infrastructure. However, India is such a diverse and large country. There is a lot of effort that we now need to put into looking at how we can galvanize the social sectors as well, the social infra sectors, with those kind of initiatives that we have actually been successful for core. So there are opportunities in the social sectors where we believe that we need to focus attention so that the developing country has got challenges that need to be addressed. I agree that today what we are seeing is that those local challenges are being addressed by local solutions as well. When we look at scaling up and sustaining that, then I think there are much more efforts that will be required.
Yeah. Mr. Sahai, at one level, what we are talking about are concepts and ideas and, things which fulfill a certain need. But Larsen and Toubro has done a great deal of work when it comes to actually realizing inclusive infrastructure growth, sustainable infrastructure growth. Could you give us a few examples of how that has been the case?
So there is something I would like to talk about, which is what we do in the rural areas, in the farming community, which is we have taken up 9 sites across the country. And these are sort of water-stressed areas, which have been deprived of water for long periods of time. Not completely arid, they do get rainfall, but very sparse. So we have identified these rural areas, each of them around, say, 3,500 to 4,000 hectares. And we have worked with the local communities over there. The first task is to see how we can improve the water resources and availability in these regions. And a number of measures are taken out with the involvement of the local people, the farmers over there, setting up councils and communities amongst them, so that they can carry on the work after we have left. So things like farm bunding, trench cutting at higher levels in the watershed area, which has an effect 2 to 3 kilometers downstream of that place in terms of raising the water level in the wells and the ponds. And activities like that which have helped raise the water level or the water table in the wells and in the ponds which the farmers access for their livelihood, for farming and cultivation. And they have seen the difference these things have made. And after we leave also, so they carry on the work. They understand the meaning now of what it means to maintain those trench cuts at elevated levels and to repair it as and when required. So how to do this at scale can be a challenge, which is something that can be taken up. We are not the only corporates, I must say. There are other corporates also doing similar kinds of things. But certainly there is an opportunity and there is a need to scale it up at a much bigger level across the country.
Mr. Gupta, earlier we'd focused on the Asia-Pacific region in terms of ports, the Indian Ocean region. Let's talk about India itself, because the India story as far as ports is concerned is so critical for our economic growth. I was reading some numbers, and this is what the Minister of Shipping and Ports said. Our present capacity in millions of tons per annum is 2,600 MTPA. By 2047, the goal, I think, is 10,000 million tons per annum. So 2 questions over here. What is the climate strategy as India expands port capacity? And secondly, what are the economic implications of reaching that 10,000 MPTA mark?
I would say India growth story in a sustainable planet. We do believe in this 10,000 million metric ton per annum capacity as announced by Honorable Minister. Why? If you look at India GDP, we talk about 6 to 7%. Maybe it may go higher. But when we look at the trade growth, it could be much higher than the GDP. And if we do my mathematics, it comes to be 9 to 10% to reach that 10,000 million metric ton by 2047. So if we focus on GDP growth, if we focus on trade growth, that is going to happen, which is 10,000 million metric ton. And in line with that, we ourselves also preparing the capacities. For example, in next 5 years, we will double our sales to 1 billion. Now, what is also very important that we do the growth in a sustainable way. Sustainable way means what? And I think I fully appreciate what you said. Sometimes we overuse the sustainability word. In my language, sustainability is something that you should hand over this planet to your grandchildren as your grandfather did to your father. That's what is the definition of sustainability, despite of exponential growth, despite of capacity creation and so on. So what is most important in this sector is the end-to-end renewable energy. And as I'm speaking, 13% of our ports are driven by the renewable energy. and we are putting up the world's largest renewable energy park, 30 gigawatt in Kavra. Now, the second thing which comes is again about planet, is about how green our planet is. Again, we are aligning ourselves with the Indian government's ambition of net zero by 2070. We as Adani Ports have set our target to be net zero by 2040. Renewable energy, in case of planet, 48 million trees by 2030. But more important, the species which is mangrove, you would have seen, when you are on the plane and you're looking at the beaches or the coastal line. In Asia, we are the pioneers in doing the mangrove development, and in India, we are the biggest. So which means air, water, land, everywhere, if we have to create the activities which are going to protect the species and which are going to make a planet greener and cleaner so that we hand over the planet to our grandchildren with the growth which we are targeting, which is 10 trillion economy.
It's the most important union budget in many years. And all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline? We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate. Investments are robust. More comprehensive GDP.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
When the whole day passes like a blur, the news just whizzes past, and you're trying to stay informed. It is our job to bring you news that truly matters. At Profit 360, we cut through the clutter, the long street deals, finance and policy news that could shape your tomorrow. The newsmakers, the trendsetters, and the innovators. In 30 minutes, we've got you covered. So stay ahead, stay informed, and stay profitable with Profit 360.
Headlines you start your day with. What matters worldwide is now in the palm of your hands. Get ready to seize the day and maximize your financial potential. Stay ahead of the curve with all you need to know on NDTV Profit.
You know, Mr. Sasalu, when one speaks about real estate development in the country, the first thing that comes to my mind are are urban spaces where builders come in, destroy old buildings, create these concrete structures, and there is no concept or thinking about how that needs to be sustainable or environmentally friendly. Now, that's obviously something that cannot be the way forward. It's not an option. It's just something that has to be done. How?
Basically, let's understand this, that 7% of the total GDP comes from only residential development in this country, right? So, which means that it's around roughly $500 billion of GDP comes from the housing, which it employs one of the largest employment creator is the housing industry in this country. The real estate development is probably one of the most important aspect of the society creation. Everybody needs a house. 2014, Honorable Prime Minister actually came up with the first housing policy, Housing for All, the sustainability initiative with regards to housing. That Housing for All and the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana was brought in, and several private people also participated in it, and also there is a government initiative which put so many people, homeless people, into homes across the country. With regards to us ruining the real estate developers, ruining the environment, let's understand that we operate under the guidance of what we call the master plans that have been created in all the cities. Our powers do not go beyond those 5 acres or 15 acres or whatever it is. There is no way that we can go to a public road and say, I'm going to improve this road. By touching that road means that you have actually broken a rule or two. So it is just that within that infrastructure that is provided is where we participate. It is not a blame game. And I think, there is a lot of emphasis that should be given towards the urban development in the country. When we are creating the master plans, it should be comprehensive. We are only developing within the guidelines that is provided by this thing in the amount of constraints that we operate. And I believe that real estate developers must be celebrated rather than being criticized is what I think.
Rumjum, people's choices and people's voices. We don't talk about this enough at all when one speaks about infrastructure growth. And the reason it is important to have inclusive growth is because we aren't one homogeneous society. We are a deeply heterogeneous society. But these are just words that I'm saying. How does one have inclusion when it comes to a vision, whether it's real estate, whether it's highways, whether it's buildings, or anything else which involves the voices of diverse people?
Absolutely. Vishnu, I think the important thing is that we don't listen to people's needs enough. Infrastructure is meant to improve the quality of life of our citizens. But we cannot assume that infrastructure will be made and they will have to live and operate within that. We need to understand what infrastructure is required for them, how they would like it, and wherever this has been used, this concept has been used, we've seen fantastic results, all of which are sustainable, because people know what they need, they want, how to get that, and how to operate that so that it benefits them. So we need to do a lot more of that. Whether it's urban areas on saying, why is it that a metro is made, but ridership is only 22%? It's because nobody asked them what the challenges are.
Mr. Sahaya, how does Larsen & Toubro reduce your carbon footprint?
So the big challenge for us is how to reduce the carbon footprint from these construction sites. The bulk of the emission takes place on account of the diesel consumption that takes place in these sites. More often they are remote, they are of a temporary nature, between 3 to 5 years typically. They have open boundaries, so to say, and getting connectivity from the grid is not always easy. So a lot of diesel consumption takes place, so the challenge for us was how to reduce the diesel consumption from 70 to 80% of the total mix to less than 60%. And I think over the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of initiatives have been taken. One is to see, as far as possible, to convert DG sets operation into grid wherever the workmen colonies are there. Secondly, to go in for more energy efficient equipment. We have identified 20 to 25% of our equipment. We are replacing them actively with the newer types of equipment. Then next is we have put IoTs and sensors on 14,000 pieces of equipment. They are tracked centrally in a command center, and they are tracked for both productivity and whether they are in operation or not, and whether what is the kind of fuel consumption taking place. So through optimization of such equipment across sites, improving their productivity, we have been able to reduce the diesel consumption per piece of equipment. And something simple as just setting targets for the various project teams at each site, that despite the increase in the activity, as a company we are growing, we are getting more orders, but we are saying that no, your diesel consumption has to come down. You will grow, but your diesel consumption has to come down. And that itself has had an effect. Our revenues and activities have grown by 15% in the last year, but diesel consumption has dropped by around 7%. So we see that as a significant effect of all these measures.
One final question, Mr. Gupta, to you. This is something that fascinates me. You've seen ports evolve in India, not just the Adani ports, but ports across the country over a period of time. How has technology had, or how is technology having a direct impact on logistics? And when one talks about logistics, there are also constraints, because outside the ports, there is the entire highway network, there is the end user who has to gain from all of this, and there are problems and bottlenecks at every stage. So again, two parts. Is there a limit to logistics when we use that word in terms of your business? And how does technology work with logistics?
Now, when I look at all the touch point of the logistics, we talk about vessels, we talk about ports, we talk about warehouses, we talk about yards, we talk about railways, we talk about trucks. Every part is the integral thing of the logistics. Today, when I compare, and this is what the target which India should take and India has taken, to reduce the logistics cost by 5 points. We are 5 points uncompetitive as compared to other best-in-class logistics cost in the world. Imagine if that 5 points goes down, how much effective we will be in the whole world. And
why are we above the world standard?
So the first thing is, do we have a seamless connectivity between all the models of transport? Are we really talking about infrastructure in isolation, or we are talking about infrastructure which is well connected, and that brings the quality of life to the consumer from end to end? So I think the challenge, so let me put it, the opportunity which we have is, thanks to all the policies and the focus of the government on the logistics, is bringing a lot of good things, whether we talk about dedicated freight corridors, whether we talk about multimodal logistic parks, whether we talk about the railway feeders, we talk about warehousing. I mean, everywhere we talk about, there's a special focus on logistics, because we all have realized if we really want to be competitive in the world, we need to work on our logistics cost. When I talk about, if we have to connect the dots of each and every infrastructure which is influencing the trade, the technology platform is the only solution. Technology is an enabler to connect everything. And I think the way we are seeing e-commerce today, how many packets we receive at our home every morning, which is totally different than what it was 5 years before. Let's talk about that logistics, which will be end-to-end seamless.
Yeah. Well, a wonderful start, I would hope, to many more conversations today for this program. And I think this really sets the table for what we were trying to do, which is to look at infrastructure and infrastructure growth from a holistic standpoint. We've looked at it from the standpoint of diversity, different voices. We've looked at it from the standpoint of technology. We've looked at it from the standpoint of carbon emissions. And we've looked at it from the standpoint of India, the macro geostrategic picture as well. All of this comes together for our economic growth as we work towards the 2047 target. But there is no doubt that there are fundamental challenges which lie ahead. We'll continue having these conversations to identify those and think through solutions. Thank you all very much.
It's the most important union budget in many years. And all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline? We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate. Investments are robust. More comprehensive GDP.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
When the whole day passes like a blur, the news just whizzes past, and you're trying to stay informed. It is our job to bring you news that truly matters. At Profit 360, we cut through the clutter, the Long Street deals, finance and policy news that could shape your tomorrow. The newsmakers, the trendsetters, and the innovators. In 30 minutes, we've got you covered. So stay ahead, stay informed, and stay profitable with Profit 360.
Headlines you start your day with. What matters worldwide is now in the palm of your hands. Get ready to seize the day and maximize your financial potential. Stay ahead of the curve with all you need to know on NDTV Profit.
Listen to the voices of reason as they talk about corporate health and investing principles with me, Neeraj Shah, on my show, Talking Point.
Let's be real, guys. There are many financial experts out there. Which stocks to target? What's good for long term? When to buy? When to sell?
What's your personality type? No, I'm not talking about your zodiac sign and what that tells you. I'm talking about the science of the human mind. And there are several theories that have emerged over the years to classify human personalities. A popular one by Myers and Briggs talks about 16 types. But the reason I'm asking you to consider what your personality type is that it could have a bearing on how you interact with money and how you spend and invest. My guests today are Dr. Anjali Chhabria, practicing psychiatrist, and Kiran Telang, author and financial planner. And over the course of this conversation on big decisions, we're going to be talking about personality types in money and also investing biases that you should be aware of.
Ever wondered how your quirks affect your wallet? Imagine your financial personality as 4 flavors. Are you the thrill-seeking, spontaneous spender who is always up for financial adventures? Or maybe you're the risk-averse guru, playing it safe with your hard-earned cash. Then there's the empathetic donor, of course, with a heart of gold who loves giving back. And lastly, the goal-oriented rational spender, the strategic saver who knows every rupee's worth. These types come from the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities. Think of it as your financial horoscope, but with real-world impact on your money. Knowing your type isn't just about fun facts. It's about mastering your finances. Whether you're adventurous or practical, your personality shapes how you save, spend, and invest.
Let's start with what I think will be a very fascinating conversation. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and for speaking to us on big decisions. I'll start with you, Doctor.
Sure.
Let's talk about personality type, because this study that I read takes the 16 personality types and clubs it into 4 buckets, which is broadly into one which is more spontaneous, one which is more risk averse, one which is empathetic, which donates a lot of money, and the last which is more rational in the way that they spend towards a particular goal. Is it that easy to classify though?
See, human beings cannot be definitely classified into 4 types. Okay, but this is just one way maybe to explain to people what is happening, and these are some personality traits that may come together. You know, for example, if you're a perfectionist, okay, then you will overthink and overassess and overanalyze a problem. Okay, and maybe you'll do it even where your spending is concerned. So for everything, you will rationalize and you will say, no, is this necessary? Is this what I want? Is this something that I have to do now? Or do I have to do it later? And maybe if you have a spouse who will say, what is this? You know, let's just go ahead. You've always wanted to buy that car or buy that house. And here you are. You know, so depending on that, of course, one can make some assumptions. But everything is not going to be, you know.
So, okay, but for the purposes of this conversation broadly, and I understand that there are so many theories that you might be able to talk about. Let's break this down, first of all, into these 4 buckets, just to give people a sense. And I'm sure Kiran can weigh in on how to fix certain problems that might emerge because of traits that you might have. Now, the first one that I was reading has to do with people that are more spontaneous with the kind of spending that they might have. The example that I read in the study is you see a Jimmy Choo bag and you decide to buy it. You don't really look at your bank balance, you just go and spend.
Right.
Can you talk about the traits that would normally be associated with this kind of behavior?
So, see, either it is new money, okay, either there is impulsive spending, which is happening, either this is something I've always wanted as a child, and today I've reached the stage where I can go and buy it. You know, either I'm one of those people who gets influenced by things around me. You know, so it could be a combination of so many factors. Either as a kid, I've got whatever I wanted, or if you look at it, I've been deprived of whatever I wanted. So just depending, of course, on the situation.
There is peer pressure though.
Absolutely. And if I'm one who is on social media and who